One for the husband, one for the wife. For the men, what is your favorite place to take your wife on a date? And for the ladies, what is the most romantic thing your husband has ever done for you?
Ooh, chihuahua. Okay, what we're going to do here, we live on a date. But anyway, let's start with the Campbells on this so we don't end with the Campbells.
I am so surprised I was given a microphone. It's like giving a kid a 9mm.
And it's on. That's the thing that surprised me. It's on.
No, it did. I didn't grab it and die of electrocution is what I thought would happen. So the question was, where do I like to take her on a date? So usually a nice dinner. We'll go out. We take special vacations every now and then. And but really, a lot of times I have to twist her arm to go out, and we'll stay at home. And we have an outdoor fireplace, and we'll do that. And I'll say, what do you want to do? And we can go anywhere you want to go, do whatever you want to do. And she says, nope, let's stay home. Let's have somebody over. And I'm not so sure that's not her perfect evening for a perfect date.
Well, now she has to talk too. This is a double question.
Yes.
So let's see if this is an amen or.
Well,
I
actually,
feel a bad moon arising.
actually, you took part of my answer. The most romantic thing he's ever done is he built me an outdoor fireplace. It's an arbor and swings on the side, and we sit in the swing or right in front of the fire, and that is my ideal date. I love to be right there with him. Or as he said last night, we really do lay sleeping bags down on the driveway and look up at the stars. I can't tell you the number of times our family has been together and we've just talked, we've just shared our heart. And to me, that's romantic. I've got his undivided attention, and there's no agenda, there's no rushing here or there.
There's an agenda.
There's a hidden agenda.
You may not know about the agenda.
All right, Brother Eddie. I don't want him to go into detail about his agenda.
Once a chemistry teacher, always a chemistry teacher.
He's taking the microphone away from her. We've been saved.
I don't know. If we laid out in the driveway in a sleeping bag, we'd be arrested where we live, or called homeless. One of the two. A good evening. For 27 years, I was a youth pastor, so we went out every Friday night, and 60 chaperones. So one, to be home is huge for me. But place we like to go is Olive Garden, probably our favorite place to go, just the two of us.
What do you eat, Eddie?
Everything. Everything.
What's your favorite dish?
My favorite probably is chicken parmesan, and then about 3 helpings of that salad bowl.
That's good.
I know this is probably going to sound really corny, but probably one of my most romantic vacations or whatever would be a cruise that we went on, and that was awesome. But we have done everything. I've gone fishing with him. I've gone hunting with him. I've sat in a deer blind with him. I have to be really quiet. He doesn't like for me to talk when we're doing that, but I just really like being. I just really like being with him.
Oh, that's
so it
great.
really doesn't matter what it is.
Not only do we have these loving couples, they really are. Evelyn and I love them both very, very much. We enjoy being around them. It's good to have fun with people, isn't it? Now, I don't know what you're going to say, but you're up next.
Well, I haven't laid on the ground with the Campbells. They've asked us to, but we...
Is her mic working? Can you actually hear her?
Yes.
I can't hear her.
And I haven't been in a deer stand with Jamie and Eddie, but we have been on our front porch. And we've spent a lot of time there this past year, and we love being on our front porch. But I think one of the most romantic things we've ever done was go to an all-inclusive. And what's the matter? What am I doing wrong, Wes?
Slide your hand up.
Is that better? Okay, thank you. I think one of the most romantic things we've done, and it's been years since we did it, but we went to an all-inclusive where it was just great. It was just the two of us, and we threw our phones in the ocean, and it was wonderful. But we like the other two, enjoy being at home. Our home is our refuge, and sometimes I think if we had our choice, we'd be in our home.
Well, you know, all these women are married to busy people, and I don't think we're busy because we just love being busy, but we love what we do and trying to help people. And carving out, communicating. I don't know. Sometimes when I'm teaching preachers, I say, when you're making gestures, it ought to be something natural, you know, not something pretending like you're dramatizing or acting. And I think, honestly, in a marriage that's growing, what happens is there are natural things that develop. There are special things you do, but Evelyn and I, we don't go to the movie theater. We haven't done that in long time, because there may be even something good somebody would like to watch, but I just don't want to support the industry. But we do like watching old movies from time to time and sitting together, eating popcorn or having a good time doing that. It doesn't cost a lot of money. One of my favorite places to go is Epcot Center. And if you're against supporting Disney, I am too. But I just sin and go. And so the fact is, I enjoy that whole world showcase thing. We don't do it a lot, but we've gone there several times. But on a regular basis, we eat out together. But anything at home, to me, is better than eating out, you know. So, and we love being with our family, but we really enjoy being alone and talking. We have a routine, and we like routine. I hope she likes routine. I love routine. And we wake up early in the morning, and we almost always spend time talking, and we do the same thing to close the day. That helps me. I was very interested in what Mitch had to say about where he lived. I've been to his home, spent the night with him many times. And but I have a little bit of a drive, between 15 and 20-minute drive to my house, and I think that's good. I used to think that wasn't good, but it is good. Dr. Bob Bevington lived about 30 minutes from the church at Knoxville Baptist Tabernacle, and he said, Clarence, you'll never know. I was very young, but he said, you'll never know how much good it does for me to leave that church facility and that school and have that drive home before I get home and see my wife. And there's just a whole lot of things that you go over in your mind and thinking and settling down. Evelyn's an inquisitive person. She'd like to know the serious things that have gone on. Most of it she understands and knows, but there's some of it we don't need to talk about. But home has to be protected. I guess in the end, you'd rather spend the night in your own bedroom than any other special place in the world. You'd rather be in your home at a meal than any other place in the world. That's sort of the way it works out. And I hope that you're not thinking that's just when you get old. You ought to work on that when you're younger. And there's so many free things to do: parks, walking, enjoying, looking at things. The stargazing we really do enjoy, like they've talked about. So I guess you learn to enjoy the Lord and enjoy one another, but we like Olive Garden too. I eat the salad. Evelyn eats the same thing no matter where she goes. She eats the same thing at the restaurant. And that's fine. That's fine with me. So I'd venture out a little bit.
We do like, turn me on, Wes, we do like P.F. Chang's, and we do like the Chop House, and we do like Bazirio's, and we do like, you name it, and we like it.
All right, let's go on.
This question is there a place for me time in a healthy marriage?
I may not be the right person to ask that question to, but I'm thinking the whole time while everyone's talking. I should be listening. I am trying to listen. But you're looking for some key that opens the magic door, or you're looking for something that you never discovered before. Oh, I didn't know that exists. I don't live my life that way. And I don't think these people live their lives that way. We've learned to love one another and enjoy being together with one another. And it's not routine as in boring, but it is enjoyable to learn to love and appreciate the person you're with, and to at least believe that that feeling is mutual. So, yes, go ahead.
You know, I think the two other ladies here would agree with me that it's much harder for a wife to find me time. My husband can go into his study and close the door, and he can shut the whole world out. But for me to find time to be alone with God and to have me time, it's hard. And it makes it hard when you do want to be together. And I think the couples of us enjoy being together, but I think it's healthy to have me time. I don't have enough of it, but it's very healthy. My husband does have more of it when he's at home, and when he's at church and college, he has no time at all. He can't attempt to study there. He has to be at home, and I protect him so he can have some me time with the Lord and preparing his messages and studying and getting direction from God. But I would just say that it's harder for the wife than it is the husband.
To know yourself. And say, good night, darling, see you in the morning. When I get up in the morning, I want to get at it. That's a tough thing for me because I'm a routine person, and I love to just jump right in it and get at it. I've never thought it was my opportunity to study at work. My office at work is not an office to study. I don't shut myself out from people there. I just can't do it. We have lots of meetings and lots of staff, but these men are busier than I am, and we all think we're busy. But and the demands, life and death things in the hands of Dr. Campbell, and working with young people can be one of the most frustrating things in the world. And Eddie and Jamie have given the biggest part of their life trying to help get kids raised and help parents help raise their kids. The real youth directors are not youth directors. The real youth directors are the parents, and so you're trying to help the parents guide their kids through. And the parents can give you a much harder time than the kids do. So they've had their share of that, I'm sure. But carving out the me stuff in your routine, I've never been able. Look, I've been in the ministry nearly 50 years, and every kind of situation imaginable, on call 24 hours a day. I've never been able to shut everybody completely out for long periods of time. Can't do it. I'm not put together that way. So, like I said, I don't know if I'm the right person. I feel very, very badly at times that Evelyn does not have enough downtime in life to just do what Evelyn wants to do. But it's her personality, it's her nature. She's trying to help everybody and help me. I'm not sure what she'd do if she had it. Honestly, I mean, maybe somebody get me out of this, Now, Kay's got an amazing thing going, but she's busy. I know she has a garden and canning and neighbors and kids and schooling and all this kind of stuff she's doing. I don't know about you people, but someone else answer their question.
Yesterday, the question was about empty nest. And I think that when you're in a situation where I am, my children are grown and gone, my husband's gone, I'm alone 80% of the time. And ladies, if you're not careful, that me time becomes selfish time. And if you're not careful, that me time becomes times of depression. There becomes a heaviness because you dwell on the me time that you've longed for so long, and now it's there, and what do you do with it? And so me time is not all that it's cracked up to be. Yes, you do need to take time. You do need to take time for yourself, to exercise and to be physically fit, and I consider that a me time. But me time also can bite you. It can hurt. I have been there. I've been in the place where, whoa, I'm alone. And that's where my weaknesses start showing up. So in the empty nest stage, that me time cannot always be good. I've had to fill my time with, I volunteer at a crisis pregnancy center because my me time was hindering me, it was hurting me. So in the stages where you are, it varies greatly. When you have little ones running around, you think you never have a me time. But that'll change, just give it time. So I think in a sense, sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not always good.
Ours has gone up and down as well. I have spent, quite a bit of time, and you are exactly right. I think too much of ladies and men can be the same way too, I guess, but it's all about me. And especially if you're in the ministry, it is not all about you. It's about other people. That's what the ministry is. But our situation has changed a little bit too, because my mom is living with us now, so it's almost like
No more me time.
Our time.
no more our time. But she is very good because she will go into her room in the evening when Eddie comes home, and she'll watch her Fox News. And so we can have some time together. But it goes in stages. But that was very well put, Kay, because I do think it is so focused on ourselves, and you can get in trouble that way.
I think the thing we have to be aware of, what I do with my life is not where I find my worth. My worth is in the Lord and how He cares for me. I have been in a situation for almost more than a year where I was not physically able to do all the things I was capable of doing. That's a psychological thing you have to deal with too. And then honestly, it's so wonderful to have things like that happen because it does something for the inner man. All of these experiences God allows are for our good and so that He will get more glory. So I am who I am in the Lord Jesus Christ. My worth is not equated with my ability to work or whatever. My wife's worth to me is not equated with all the things she does for me. And it's wonderful. I mean, there are people who would applaud her and others who would make fun of her that I never go to a drawer that there's not clean socks and underwear and a shirt, reach for a shirt that is not ironed and ready to go. But there's people who would be just as critical of that as I am grateful for it. But we're devoted to one another. We're submissive to one another. And I'm trying to read her. She's trying to read me. I'm trying to get to know her even after all these years of marriage. I'm trying to understand who she is, what she really needs, and that changes. The woman you're married to when you're in your 20s is not the same woman exactly that she is in her 30s or 40s or 50s or 60s. And so you're trying to do the best you can. And my real issue here is that don't be constantly looking for something you're going to get to do or get away, and then you'll be happy, because you're never going to be happy. Be happy with what you have and who you are and where you are and what God's given you now. And so that's the way I feel about it. I mean, it's a vacation for me. We take vacations, and we take nice vacations, and I'm grateful we can do that at this juncture in my life. There's probably nowhere in the world I would say I want to go that the Temple Baptist Church wouldn't say, go and do it. I remember one time Dr. Campbell recommended me I drive a certain kind of car, and I said to our deacons, they said, we don't care what you drive anything you want to. I don't know a church that could have loved me more than this church loves me. But they can't make me happy, or letting me go somewhere can't make me happy, because I'm taking the same person with me, So I think we've got to learn on a daily basis in a 24-hour day how to love and appreciate one another and find the time as we're going through life to be satisfied and content. Godliness with contentment is great gain. 1 Timothy 6:6. And the reason it is enough. It's enough. And we live in a world that says it's never enough. But godliness with contentment is great gain. And you can't get any more than that, because that is absolutely enough. So stop blaming somebody else for, all of it, or blaming yourself. Find who you are in the Lord and just rejoice and determine to be a happy person. The things I've had to deal with physically haven't taken my happiness. As a matter of fact, they've been very good for me. It's been a difficult thing to go through them, very good for me. And it's worked on my pride, limping around and using a cane. It's really knocked my ego in the head. You know, I can find myself trying to straighten up and really walk well when I'm seeing some certain person come toward me. And that's all because I want them to think that there's nothing wrong with me. But that's ego. And this woman accepts me as I am all day long and loves me, not because of what I can do or can't do, but because she just knows I need her love and she gives it to me. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that.
Next question is this. For couples who have children and teenagers, what suggestions would you give for juggling many activities such as sports, school, and church activities?
Well, I hate to talk all the time, but I really don't hate to talk all the time, but I wish people would quit half the things they do. I mean, we live in the most ridiculous time I've ever seen in my life. I tell our people you can't serve God actively in our church in any position if your children participate in organized sports on the Lord's Day. And they all know it. And people say, he is just an ogre, he's just an ogre. No, they don't have enough sense to know I'm looking out for them. Because if they don't worship God and get the spiritual fuel they need and the communion with God that leads, it's like public prayer shouldn't be your prayer life. It should just when your prayer life pops up publicly. And the church service is not all of God you get all week long, but you know, to rob yourself of the Lord's Day and the wonderful things of the Lord's Day. And then, you know, there are people literally who are taking their kids somewhere Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They don't even have a home. It's a hotel. And there's kids in Christian homes who never eat a meal at home. And if they do, they never sit down at the table and pray together and hold hands and have a family. You know, Evelyn put the quietus on me on that. When we were in Chattanooga, you know, loose at both ends, going night and day, trying to help Dr. Robertson in an aging part of his life, and running home for this, that, and the other, and then trying to straighten out everything at the dinner table, because we always try to eat together. She just started crying one day, and she said, you know, I work very hard that we can have a meal, and you come in here and want to correct these boys in the middle of it all, and it just ruins the whole thing. Well, that taught me a great lesson, and I've tried to make my home a home. But all the running about, when it's eliminating home life, eliminate some of that so you can have a home life, for goodness sakes. Now, I've said what I'm going to say.
Happy to comment. So I guarded that extremely, extremely carefully, and I limited things very strongly. In fact, I did not allow my son until he was a senior. He asked to play in a basketball league, and I said, that's fine. The coach came to me one day, and he said, do you know how good your son would be if you would have let him start this years ago? He would be probably one of the most outstanding athletes we have. And I looked at him and I said, I know. That's why I didn't let him start. Went right over his head. He missed it. And I had the biggest fear that I had someone who was very, very good in sports, that would become his life. And I looked at him one day and I said, you're a fine young man, but once you leave high school, your ability to make a three-point shot is not going to come up in a job interview. And your ability to understand life and communicate and under principles of successful living will. And so I guarded that. That home was a sanctuary. There was a sanctuary that we protected and limited the time. We had a lot of good family time. We did all kinds of stuff. We had fun. And
Amen.
you know.
You worked with teenagers for years. And still do.
The everything that's been said is right on. You have to manage as a youth pastor, of course, in a large ministry, which is not typical. I worked very hard in coordinating the events for the family in the home and the church. And when I felt the church was taking on too much of the young people's time, we tried to manage a lot of that. But as far as our household, our kids were involved in everything that we were in. But one of the things that she insisted on was, I think she mentioned it yesterday, was family dinner. And so every evening we were together for, it may have been 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night even sometimes, but we sat together for a meal.
Good.
And then even today, every Sunday afternoon, my kids, of course, live in the area still, so we get to all meet and have Sunday dinner together every week. And on rare occasions, when we're out of town or one of the kids are out of town, that doesn't happen. But I would say probably 45 Sundays out of the year, we're together as a family, and allows me and my wife now as as grandparents to get to help, rear grandchildren. And spending time with them is one thing, but also I think grandparents have a tremendous not just love for their kids, but can help rear the grandkids. We get to babysit, we get to take them out and do a lot of things. But the home has been very, very, very important for us.
Yes.
What advice would you give to parents who have children that are beginning to date?
I
12 gauge.
yeah. God didn't give me girls. I mean, they would be. We wanted girls. We had boys. Our boys have done wonderfully well and married lovely girls and have beautiful children. And believe me, Evelyn and God get all the glory for that. I tried. I think that I think my wife could answer that.
Our boys never did date until they were out of high school. I mean, a lot, not single date. It's like Eddie said, the church always provided their activities, and 90% of that was done there. And I think you have to decide that yourself, because you're going to live with it when they get out of your home. But I don't think you can be too strict on dating.
My daughter's first boyfriend, excuse me, honey, came and said, I'd like to come every Saturday and see your daughter. I said, no. I said, you can come, but you're going to work. And I gave him the most nasty jobs. One time we were working together, and I said, I don't always take my medicine. And I go, the voices, they tell me to do bad things. And I told him I don't mind eating prison food. And I put a pumpkin on a fence post, and I said, at 200 yards, I can take a 30-06 and make that thing explode. And it's half the size of your head. And I also told him, I said, I know all the ER doctors, we will pronounce you dead and write suicide. And the last thing I told him was, I said, I love Julie. You make her cry, I'll make you cry. And really did not let any of them date until they were out of high school. I thought that was, today it starts so early, and then you have to ask yourself, okay, what's the next step? And so protected that pretty seriously. And now it's paying its dividends. They still call. One's married. One probably have to advertise in the paper to get her married.
She's an absolutely
Is this being
beautiful
recorded?
girl. She's an absolutely beautiful girl, but it's her father they're afraid of.
Scratch that.
I think if there was time, and we're going to let them talk about this, but if there was time, we should talk about social activity, that girls and boys should be together, socially involved in things, so that they do have this natural attraction for the opposite sex. And what happens, there's so much predatoring on young people today. not just by people, but by advertisement and everything imaginable to make merchandise of them. So many kids get caught into things, and they bounce back and forth from being maybe so isolated the first experience or encounter they have with anything that is anywhere near sexual, may even be with the same-sex person. And there's some prohibitions that God lays out in His Word that are very clear, and we need to bring our kids up knowing those things. But also, we haven't done as good a job as we could have done having social activity and kids being engaged socially, just learning social skills, relational skills, conversational skills, things that they're going to have to deal with. You know, the girls are talking about someone or the boys are saying something that shouldn't be said. That's all a part of growing up. And that all helps for the eventual maturity level where they're ready to have courtship or whatever you want to call it. And I don't think we get far in this discussion by isolating things and saying, well, this is the day they date. You are now this age and you date. You can do that. It may be the healthiest thing in the world to do. But honestly, you prepare them for that as they're playing with the neighbor's children when they're 6 or 7 years old and developing relational skills and skills about, you know, who we're going to whine to and talk about and what we're going to do and not do. And growing up is a lifetime process. And no one ever is ready to get married. No one. And there's so many things we should have dealt with before we got married we don't deal with. And then there's things we deal with all through our marriages. But the skill set, the principal skill set to deal with those things can be developed before dating ever begins, so much of it. Would you agree?
I could talk all day on this, and I won't, but I see very few parents teaching or training their young people on how to date, what to look for in a girl, talk to them about sex and that part of their life. You know, a boy and a girl, they're designed to like each other. They're designed to want to touch each other, and all of that is exciting to them. It was to you, it was to me, and but we are finding, Brother Campbell's message to the dads was so important that our boys need Dad to take them out and have a man day with them to where they feel a close enough relationship to communicate and to talk about these things, and same thing with the daughter and her mother. But it's not happening today. And your kids are going to learn about it from somewhere, from somebody, and they are inquisitive. They will figure it out, and it will not be from you unless you are proactive. And number two, our kids dated after high school, but we never discouraged them, and especially in this day and age, I would not discourage them from liking the opposite sex, okay? My daughter married the boy she liked in high school. And you know what? That was fine. But at a social activity at the church, it was a banquet, junior-senior banquet, they got to go together. But there wasn't any, every Friday night a date, coming over our house, watching TV. We didn't do that. There was a lot of, everything was with a group. And it was with others, with her brother around, and her, a older sister's little brother's a great chaperone. And he tells mom and dad everything. And but the big thing is you have to take some time and opportunity to teach your children. That is your responsibility. It's not the internet. Last thing I'll say, and I said this to a group of adults, and I got the most unbelievable response of just almost shock and awe. Moms and dads, you have a right to know what goes on in your home, in every nook and cranny of your home. That is your responsibility. Our kids, the only privacy they had in our home was to bathe and dress alone. Any note they brought in, any text message, anything. Our kids didn't have cell phones in high school. And when my son was graduating from high school, his birthday was in May, I gave him a cell phone. The first thing he said was, hell just froze over. And but there ought not be any part of their life that you are not poking into, and you have a right to. And every everybody in society tells you you don't. My dad, we had eight kids in our family, and usually somebody else living with us, a bus kid or two, literally living with us. But my dad went through every bedroom every single night, checking every bed to make sure everybody was in their spot. Now, we hunted, we fished, we played with guns, we shot out the back door of the house and things of that nature, but Dad knew everything that was going on. And I believe our parents feel like they have no right to know what's going on, and you do. Okay?
I think what we say here is that you say, well, I guarantee you Dad didn't know everything. But Dad had access. He had every access. And so there again, we're talking about having a family, not having a man and a woman and young people living under the same roof. There's a family. Mothers can say things to boys that they need to hear about girls. And fathers can say things. I didn't have a daughter to talk to that way, but they can if there's really been a family nurtured in this situation. And so we're not going to have all the answers, but we all have access to the principles. One last thing I'd say on this, and we'll have another question, is that we shouldn't be afraid to be specific about things. There's been too much, well, you ought to behave yourself, I wouldn't be that general about things if I were you. I've said that kind of thing, but be specific. But you don't have to be specific in front of somebody. Those conversations need to go before they ever got with that person. And all the stuff that boys are visually and all this kind of thing, we just have to have the relationship with our family and in our family where we can talk about it. We certainly didn't raise perfect children because we didn't have a perfect dad. I was trying to learn how to live the Christian life while trying to be a husband and a father. And so my sin, one of my great ones, was overreaction, And that's why God's had to hammer on me so much in my life, I imagine. I don't know all the answers to that. But I appreciate having good people up here who can make these kind of comments. You have one more question, maybe?
This couple writes, we have friends whose marriage is falling apart. What is the best way we can help them?
Well, I've had a lot of people through the years, come into me and say, I can't live with her anymore. They want to explain something, or I can't live with him anymore. And some of it's been pretty bad, really bad. And I would say to them, I couldn't either. And they sit there in shock, But I said, God can change people's lives. He can change your life. He can change their life. I think the one exclusion, there's an exclusion, there's exclusivity in almost any discussion here. When someone was in danger of physical harm and violence, I did not try to get them to stay in the same household if it had already been proven that they could be hurt and had been hurt. I grew up around that. Never engaged in that, thank God, but I grew up around that. My father tried to kill my mother, and I'm sure the day he did it, she probably deserved killing, but the fact is it was something he shouldn't have tried to do. But they grew up toughing it out, who could force one another. And people just don't know how to communicate. Evelyn will say to me sometimes, you're not going to talk to me in that tone. And I'd say, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Just a habit, And then every once in a great while, maybe every decade, I'll say to her, I don't want you speaking to me like that, please. But the fact is, she's going to win. She's going to win. You know why? Because I'm going to let her win. I mean that. But learning to talk. We don't say shut up. We might say be quiet, but we don't use the expression shut up. I try to say to her, use my pet names before you speak to me. If I speak to her, it's honey, darling, sweetie, because that that moderates my tone to remember who she is. It's like Jesus, his disciples said, teach us to pray as John also taught his disciples. That wasn't a lesson on how to pray, it was motivation to pray. But he said, here's how you start. You start with this: Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. In other words, the first thing you have to do is recognize to whom you're speaking. That's the first great lesson in prayer. You recognize, to whom am I speaking? And you know, even in our marriage relationships, how long have y'all been married? 31 years. 31 years? 34. 34 years, 49 years for us. We have to be reminded to whom we're speaking. I've made a covenant with God and some promises to this woman, and there is no woman in all the earth that I can say with a possessive pronoun, this is my wife. This woman is mine. She holds a place in my life that no other human being on earth holds, and my sons know that. So if they want to get between me and their mother, they got a big job on their hands. So I think speaking that way, and you've got to bring people back. You know, it's like remedial reading. You know, we learn the alphabet, A, B, C, D, and then we learn the letters together, and we learn phonetical approach to reading and how we can sound out the phonetical approach and sounds. If you teach phonetical approach to reading, then you can see words that you never have seen before, and you can sound them out. Well, when people haven't learned that, you have remedial reading lessons, and you go back to the basic things. And basically, when you're dealing with people, you've got to go back. Do you know the Lord? They say, well, yeah, we know the Lord. What's that got to do with it? Well, you're going to be able to communicate about something, and you're going to be enabled by someone that other people don't have access to. There's a starting place, and then there's ways to talk about this. And, you know, we all get worked up and say things we shouldn't say. Ask for forgiveness. Use manners around your house to one another. If my wife hands me something, I should say thank you. If I want something, I should say, would you please hand me that? Thank you. Those softening of the edges will help you in your home. If not, you'll become coarse with those you love most and will say the cruelest things to the people you say you love the most. What do you want to say now? Okay, but anyway, I'm just kidding. Sorry.
One thing I would caution a woman in giving advice to a couple who's having marital problems: be very careful what you say. Be careful not to get between the two people. So I'm sure that they have something to say. Mitch? Eddie, go ahead.
Well, all too frequently we have dealt with this. In fact, it's very fresh in our minds. And we don't take sides. We try to get people to the right people for help. And to think that it's one side is just grossly out of proportion, because it's both. And usually it deals with just several issues on a routine basis that just keep raising their head. And I have found that if I can get them to the right counselor, and we're their friends, we'll take them out and spend time with them and try to love on both of them and be the right example. That's probably 8/10 of what we do to help others. Do you want to add anything?
If somebody comes to me, or usually it's and they're having marital problems, it's usually the fella that will come to me because he knows me or we're close. It's like what we taught yesterday, to young couples, that everybody ought to have somebody already in mind they're going to go to. Like the family doctor you'd go to, a counselor that you need to already have in mind. Well, usually they don't, and so they'll come to me. But like Brother Campbell said, I will try to find somebody that they will both agree to go to. And I challenge them to already decide to do what he says. And so before you go there, I want you to tell me right now that you both try to get them to a place where they want help, and because there's no sense in going to the doctor if you're not going to do what he says. So at that point, my opportunity is to get them into a place, get them back in church, get them going to church regularly, spend a lot of time. My wife and I pray for these folks a lot, and but then get them to somebody when they're willing to help. They're not ready to be helped necessarily, but they're willing to listen to it and accept it.
My wife and I have been to Israel many times. First time I ever went, we went underneath by the temple walls. We finally walked through a corridor down a secret passageway, and they said, "This is the bedrock. This is where the wall was started. This is as far down as I could go. This is the bedrock. It all rested on this. This is the bedrock." And I'd say in surgical procedures or diagnostic things or working with young people or church, and Eddie's had it all to have to do. You need to not just do symptomatic things, treat symptomatic things, but try to find some bedrock thing, place to build on and to build up. And it'll always go back to what God's design has been and is, and what these principles God has put in place in His Word are. I think Mitch was talking about Proverbs the other evening, or one of the lectures, and he did an outstanding job, of course, and was talking about sometimes we take things as a promise, but it's really a principle if followed, and however the Lord will work it out. I came home from college. I'd finished a little junior college and was at the University of Tennessee trying to finish college so I could go to seminary. Had to take a bachelor's degree to graduate school. I was just going night and day, pastoring a church, night and day. 2 little boys at home. I loved my wife. I loved my children. I've committed to them, but then she was patient. I came home one day from school and came in my house, and Brother Hagin, who was my pastor, he was the pastor that I had when God called me to preach, and some of you have heard me tell this story, was sitting in my living room. And it wasn't out of the ordinary to see Brother Hagin, but I said, "Well, hey, how you doing?" He said, "I'm doing well." I said, "Well, we're glad to have you here." And I looked at Evelyn, and I could see something wasn't exactly right. And he said, "Clarence, come here and sit down, please." And I sat down, and he said, "You know, I've known you since you were just a teenage boy and when God called you to preach. And the Lord has used you in a mighty way. You have a beautiful wife and 2 little boys, and your wife needs a husband, and your children need a father." It hurt me. As a matter of fact, it hurts me now to think about it. Because I didn't mean to neglect them or anything like that. I mean, all I wanted was a Christian home. But I had someone who loved me, and I was so secure in his love for me that he could say anything he needed to say to me. And he needed to say that. And he said to me some of the things I could do to improve. And you know, I changed my class schedule, still finished college, but I took another 1.5 years finishing a 4-year degree. But I still had my wife and kids and had the confidence of my wife and children. That's not because of the decisions I made. I did make decisions. It's because I allowed someone into my life that could speak to me, that I knew loved me and wanted what's best for me. And you know, the name of Dillard Hagin will always be so precious to me because of the way he nurtured me and loved me and helped me over one hump after another. And you know, one of the things you need to do is allow someone in your life with the purest motives possible that you can talk to. There are secrets that no married couple should share just openly, freely. We're not asking people to do that. I don't ask people to do that. I'm not the priest, you know. The Lord Jesus is the one mediator between God and man. But if we had more people like that who could help struggling marriages, or more people like that young pastors would let into their lives, we'd have so much fewer tragedy to deal with, and ministry, marriage, everything else. How many of you have been married more than 40 years? Would you raise your hand? Keep it up real high. How many have been married more than 30 years? Would you stand if you've been married more than 30 years? Good. All right. Very good. Have you been married more than 25 years? Would you stand with this group? More than 25 years you've been married? That's wonderful. Now, we've got some kids here who've been married 2 months, a month, 3 weeks. I want you to just turn around and look around just a minute, the people who are seated. Okay? As much as possible, for the next 5 minutes or so, maybe even 10 max, I want you to get acquainted with someone that's seated and just introduce yourself to them and have a prayer together, and then come back to your seat. That's going to be our little break. Do it in here, would you please? If you have to excuse yourself or something, do it, but if not, stay with us. But just find someone now, would you please? Right now, someone, you that are standing, find someone that's seated and do that. Thank you. God bless.